Aron Balok, who is with the Pecos Valley Artesian Conservancy District. Aron, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and we'll see if we can fill up some airtime.
Oh, I'm sure we can if we talk just about the weather, which is one of the few topics that people can collectively talk about and not get into trouble with. Aron is from New Mexico. How long have you been in this corner of the state?
Oh, I've been down here almost 20 years now.
Okay.
So,
have you ever seen it this dry for this long? I think we've all seen it this dry, but I don't know if we've ever seen it this long.
You know, if it hadn't have been for that big monsoonal event that we had last summer, then certainly we wouldn't have seen it this dry. But we haven't seen much rain since then, and so maybe in 2011 we saw it. Just prior to those big floods that we had that ended the last major drought we were in. So it's certainly extraordinary when you look at the weather record. It's been a long time since it's been this dry, this long.
Do we see cycles? You know, most people's attention spans is so short, and their memories are so short. But we're in cycles, the weather cycles.
Sure.
Where are we at now? Are we like in the beginning of a long drought phase, or are we in the middle of the drought phase, or what's your best guess as to where we are in all this?
You probably know this as well as anyone. It's really difficult to predict the weather, and when you go into a long-range forecast, well, then it becomes even more difficult and less accurate. And so one of the unique features about our weather patterns here, I'm certainly no meteorologist, but it's what we refer to as a flashy system. And what that means is that we have these extended dry periods punctuated by monsoonal and flood events, flash flood events, and that's the way our system operates. And so it's kind of an inside joke that I smirk at from time to time when people talk about normal weather patterns. We don't have normal. Normal's a setting on your washing machine. we don't have a normal weather pattern here, and so these dry events followed by big flood events are historically what we see, and you try and average those, and we'll have some good years and bad years. The 80s were just extraordinarily wet. And so that tends to be the frame of reference that people use for what they think normal should look like, when in fact that was, again, historically, that was a pretty good wet trend that we enjoyed. And so now we're heading into this dry period that we have no idea how long it's going to last. People love to talk climate change. I don't want to get into that debate with someone. We need to be planning for drought. Mm-hmm. We can all agree that when it doesn't rain, we can call that a drought, and that's what we're seeing right now. There's very little water upstream in the reservoirs. Well, Carlsbad Irrigation District counts on that surface water to be stored, and there's just very little there. Our aquifer here, we're super fortunate to have the aquifer that we have, the Artesian aquifer. That is why the Pecos Valley Artesian Conservancy District was formed, was to manage and protect that artesian aquifer, and it's much like those surface water storage locations, except we store ours in the ground. And so when we're in a dry period like we are right now, we're certainly going to strain that aquifer. Our aquifer is down, but that's again one of the amazing features of it. When we do have those big events, we have a real rapid recharge system. And we've got monitor wells throughout the valley here, and we'll see those monitor wells jump, some of them 30 feet in the course of a few days, recovering when we do get those inflow events. So we're one day closer to a good rain, but I can't tell you when it's going to happen.
That's a very optimistic way of looking at that. How big is the Artesian Conservancy District? How big is this aquifer that we're sitting on?
Our district, and I could give you a really long answer to that, and I'll try not to, but our district runs from about 20 miles north of Roswell down to roughly to Brantley Reservoir.
Okay.
And it's about 20 miles wide. It's kind of a weird shape, so that's not 100% true in all the places, but in general terms, and that was intended to kind of overlay where the aquifer is. When we were formed as a result of a hydrologic survey, and they were able to kind of identify where the Artesian aquifer lay, and that laid the groundwork for some of the laws that we've got in place in the state of New Mexico for water management. And that's how we were able to start defining that criteria. Was we were able, through the verbiage on it is through scientific investigation, able to define the aquifer. And so that aquifer in the Artesia area here tends to be a little deeper. Up towards Roswell, it's a little more shallow. It was discovered in Roswell. There was a gentleman drilled a well to the unheard of depth of 250 feet, and when he hit that aquifer, that water flowed to the surface, and that is the definition of an Artesian aquifer. It just means that it's under pressure. Just the way the slope of the confining layer, there's a layer of clay that keeps that water from rising up. As the pressure builds, it can't go anywhere until you drill a hole into it, and then it pushes towards the surface. So
okay, what replenishes the aquifer? Is it just the rainfall that we get in this part of the state, or is there a snowpack, or is there some other place in geologically that replenishes that aquifer?
That's what makes it so dynamic, is it's all of the above.
Okay.
So any of the rain or snow that falls anywhere to the west, up to the ridge of the mountain, all the way up to Pecos, New Mexico. It's a tremendous watershed, and you can kind of, in general terms, think of that water as moving towards the east and towards the south. And so it's all migrating towards the river. And so any rain that falls in that really large area contributes to recharging the aquifer. So that's what makes it so great, is we've got that combination of young water and old water. So we've got snowmelt water that has been moving towards our aquifer for decades, and then when we get those big flood events, we see a rapid recharge that tops it off. And so that's why we're able to work the aquifer the way we do, and take from it, and when it rains, it recharges. And
right.
And to the credit of the predecessors at PVACD, one of the biggest compliments I've heard for what the district has done is he said, if you guys can keep doing what you're doing, you have an infinite water supply.
That's great.
And that's pretty profound. But there's a big if in there, and that's if we can keep doing what we're doing. And that just simply means we've been balancing our withdrawals with our inflows.
Sure. Now, how much of what you do and what this district does interacts or intertwines with, say, the efforts to get rid of the salt cedars to help the Pecos River, and then the eventual flowing down to Brantley Lake to take care of the Carlsbad Irrigation District and the compacts that we have with Texas?
It's a pretty short question, and it's a incredibly complicated answer. So I would, just to try and summarize, we're active in all of that.
Okay.
The watershed management is something that the district has a desire to do more of. That would include trying to everyone loves to say eradicate the salt cedar. You're not going to eradicate it. The best we can hope for is to keep them in check. Very invasive species, very water hungry, and so there's perpetual efforts there to try and keep those in check. I think our native juniper are probably one of the silent water thieves that nobody gives enough credit to. They're very prolific. They cover the countryside. If you look at the old photos of the area that are now covered with junipers, in the early 1900s, there were virtually none. And so each one of those is a little green vampire that's sucking a little of our water. And so you get that cumulative effect. And that's one of our desires, is to become more active in doing things like that. And as far as delivering water to Carlsbad, that's been a sore spot with Carlsbad and the PVACD for a long time. Understandably so. Carlsbad Irrigation District has a pretty senior water right. They use surface water, and we use groundwater.
Okay.
And so there's always a threat of them not having enough water, and them wanting the state engineer to manage that water accordingly through prior appropriation doctrine. The downside to that is that curtailment, if you told everyone they had to use less water from their wells, there's certainly going to be a pretty pronounced lag time before the river's going to do anything. So my estimation is at least 5 years, and probably longer than that if we didn't have some inflows to cause that river to flow more. But we've always been a gaining reach of the river. We have losing and gaining reaches all up and down the river, and as it comes through the PVACD, it is a gaining reach of the river, so we are contributing water to Brantley. And then we have the augmentation wells that the Interstate Stream Commission has put in, where we're able to pump groundwater for the benefit of either Texas or Carlsbad. Right now, those pumps are on, and that's for the benefit of the Carlsbad Irrigation District to try and get them more water.
So we're pumping water out of the Pecos Valley Artesian Conservancy District, out of these the aquifer.
Yep.
To dump into the river to meet their needs, which apparently you can do right now because it's available to do that. I know there was an effort years ago, and I think it was in conjunction with the Salt Cedar Project and some of these others, to buy up water rights at the state level. I think the legislature appropriated money, and water rights were retired to take them offline. Is that something that your district keeps an eye on and manages that for the state?
No, we don't manage any of the water rights that are owned by the Interstate Stream Commission. The state of New Mexico spent well over $100 million. And the reason we did, the short answer on the reason we did, is because we lost our lawsuit from Texas on under-delivering on the Pecos River. And essentially what the Supreme Court said is you can't ever under-deliver again. And so...
Was this the U.S. or the state Supreme Court?
This is U.S. Supreme Court.
It went all the way to the...
Yep, that's when one
top.
state sues another one, that's where it goes, and the Supreme Court agreed with Texas. We have a little hindsight now, where, if that case were to happen today, we could probably prove that what they argued wasn't true, because part of what they said was how we depleted the flow of the river, but I think everyone agreed that we didn't deliver them enough water. And so we have to do that now. So the state's back was against the wall, and they were scrambling. We come up with what was called the settlement agreement, the 2003 settlement agreement, where PVACD, CID, all the acronyms, Bureau of Reclamation, Fort Sumner Irrigation District, we all got together and hashed it out and said, these are the things that we can do to make the river flow more, and we can deliver water to Texas. And part of that was the augmentation well fields. So if we had to pump groundwater for Texas, we could do that. But probably the biggest thing that helped us was our ability, as a result of the Supreme Court case, to run a credit. Mm-hmm. And so once we got a handle on under-delivering, we were able to over-deliver and get credit for that over-delivery. And so we're at a point now where we've got a really substantial credit with the state of Texas. And so I don't lose a lot of sleep over how we're going to deliver to Texas, because on a year like we're having right now, and the year we had last year, where we don't have enough water to go around, it's pretty easy to do the math. Even I can do the math on half of nothing. And so we have to deliver to Texas. We essentially have to give them half of what comes in. That's pretty easy to figure out when nothing came in. Yeah. Where we tend to get in trouble is where, I'll use that word that I don't like, normal. Mm-hmm. We go from a really dry period like we're in now to just normal inflows, or better, average inflows. Now we've got some water stored upstream, and we've got hundreds of miles of dry river, essentially, to push that water down to try and get it to Texas. So if we release half of the water that we have from Fort Sumner, it's a pretty safe bet not half of it's going to get there. And so that's where that credit comes into play, and we're able to release that water for the benefit of Texas. And if it doesn't all get there, we can use up some of our credit water and deliver that to Texas. And so we're in pretty good shape. The settlement agreement has been extraordinarily successful. Mm-hmm. It's been money well spent.
Good.
And so now we're just trying to work out the details with the Carlsbad Irrigation District and how we're able to make sure that those people that are engaged in agriculture can remain whole.
Sure.
And
So
that's tough.
that is tough. So who are the customers, if you will, of the Pecos Valley Artesian Conservancy District? Are these farmers? Are these individual homeowners? Is there industry that's a part of this group, if you will?
Excellent question. Always a source of confusion. Unlike other irrigation districts, we're not an irrigation district. We're a conservancy district. We're an Artesian Conservancy district, which makes us unique in the state. We don't have members. We have constituents. And so every landowner within the valley is a constituent of the PVACD within our boundaries. And you'll know if you're a constituent when you get your tax bill, because we're funded through ad valorem taxes. And so you'll see on your assessment there what goes to the PVACD.
Okay.
And so a big part of what the district does, we own and maintain a meter on every single well within the valley, with the exception of domestic wells. So if you have a water right, it's attached to a well, and we have one of our meters on it. It's our job to not only make sure that that meter is functional, but we also pay the expenses of the water master with the state engineer's office to come read and do the accounting on that to make sure that nobody is over diverting. And so that's a big part of what we do. And then the other big deal that we work on is we plug abandoned wells. So anytime a producer, a well owner, is going to replace a well, he's obligated by law to plug the old well, and they can contact us and we will come plug that well just almost exclusively. There's some rare exceptions, but we'll plug that well at no expense to the landowner.
Wow.
And so that's one of the more fun parts of my job is being able to do that. We see wells that are literally 100 years old, that sometimes the casing is severely deteriorated or the well has collapsed. If it's an artesian well and the well has collapsed, we have to get back down to that confining layer so we can keep those two aquifers from communicating. So we have to drill through everything that's still in the well. Sometimes there's still a pump in the well, so we have to drill through all that trash that's been collapsed upon in there. And it's always a little bit tense on the drill rig when we're trying to drill through unknowns. But it's also a lot of fun, and we'll drill down to that confining layer, and then we'll set a concrete plug, and then we'll plug it all the way to the surface with cement. So we prevent any surface contamination from getting into the well, and we also prevent that artesian pressure from leaking up into the shallow. Or when we're straining that artesian aquifer, it keeps that shallow, which is generally lower quality water, we keep that from leaking down into the artesian. So it
Wow.
serves two purposes there. And
So somebody may acquire a piece of property, or maybe they've had a well water well that's just not working right. So they apply for it, they get permission to drill another well. Where you guys come in, or your district comes in, is to help get that old well plugged. Or maybe you come across one on a piece of property that you
absolutely
are working. And so if you've got questions about that, I guess that's one of the first numbers to call would be, or the first group to call would be your group.
Absolutely, and that's why we're asking for help from the public. If you come across an old well, you see a casing sticking up out of the ground, or some of those wells are level with the surface. Every now and then you hear about someone that actually has the misfortune of falling into a well. Mm-hmm. The landowner is responsible for that. They're the ones that could get in trouble if little Johnny falls down their well, even if they didn't know that well was on their property. If they'll give us a call, come by the office, send us an email, whatever it takes, we'll come out and we'll assess it. We'll help them with all the paperwork, get it plugged. Then it's no longer a liability to them, and it makes it safe, and it protects our aquifer.
Wow. Because again, you talked about keeping the water sources separate.
Correct.
Maintaining the quality of the aquifer versus the surface water, and that's what that's what your folks are doing. Now, you're hiring folks right now, so are these water masters? Are these well pluggers? What kind of positions do you guys have with the district?
Right now, we are looking for the position title is called a field technician, And so this will be somebody who a lot of their responsibility will be working on water meters. We visit every water meter in the valley at least once a year. That's our ambition. Pull it out of line, do a rebuild if necessary, replace any worn parts, and make sure it's functional so that we get an accurate read on how much is being diverted. That's a big part of what that person's job is going to be. And then plugging operations, they'll be on the rig when we're plugging wells and be a rig hand there.
Okay.
We've got some really excellent equipment. I'll brag on the district a little bit. We all serve at the pleasure of a 5-member elected board of directors, and they're great to work for. They give us the tools we need to do our job. So we've got good equipment, exceptionally knowledgeable board of directors, and our well driller is very, very knowledgeable. So we've got a good crew. We pride ourselves on doing it right the first time, and so it's a great place to work. We certainly can't compete with the oil field for wages, but when you look at the big picture, we have an excellent benefit program. It's a great place to work. It's a stable place to work, and the truth is the reason we have vacancies is because people retire, because it is such a good place to work.
Well, so is there like a minimum education requirement or a prior work experience that would be helpful for someone considering applying?
Experience and education are always a bonus, but we can train somebody to do just about everything that they'll need to do. We just, as they say, we're looking for a good hand. We need somebody that's got some sense and can learn and is willing to hustle. And if you've got those traits, well, then you may just be a fit for the district.
And the area that you would be working in would be that area that you talked about before, from about 20 miles north of Roswell to down about Brantley Lake, and then either side of the Pecos River, I guess, 20 miles or so. That's your territory.
Yes, that's our territory. Our office is in Roswell, so you'd need to be willing to be there by 7:30 every morning, but
have coffee.
Yep.
Get started for the day.
Absolutely.
Well, this is really it's an interesting thing. I don't think a lot of people know about it. Did we just have an election for one of the board members?
We did.
Some of the board members
last year. We had
in November.
Yep. So the areas are broke up so that we don't have an election every year. We actually have an election every 2 years. And so we've got, there's 2 board members that represent Eddy County. And so next year, one of those board members will be up for election again. And
then this past November, one of them was up, and that election happened on that. Well, because that's one of those things you go in, everybody is usually familiar with mayor, council,
right,
president, Congress, but they see, what is this, Pecos Valley Artesian Conservancy District? What is that all about? And that's kind of what we're having you on to talk about.
Absolutely, and that's we have been trying to increase our profile so people understand who we are. Unfortunately, we actually had somebody bring this up at a board meeting recently, that there was no public attendance at that board meeting. And that was the question, why is nobody here? And unfortunately, the answer to that is because no one is angry.
Well, that's usually the case. I don't care what level it is.
Yes, unfortunately, that's kind of the way we operate. If you don't have an axe to grind, you tend to not go to the meeting. And so in a way, it's kind of affirmation that we're doing what we said we were going to do. But I understand that's not the way it should be, and I want people to attend our board meetings and to know what we're up to and why we're doing the things that we're doing. And I'm proud of the work that the district does, and they're doing it for everyone. And it's such an easy position to defend the things that we do, because our mission, as stated in our founding documents, are to conserve the waters of the Pecos Valley. And that's to the benefit of everyone. If we don't have water, we don't have the industry, we don't have the ag community, and all of those that are dependent upon it. So it doesn't matter whether you work at a car dealership or whether you work in agriculture, you're still reliant upon this aquifer that allows all of us to do the things that we do. It's it is the foundation for our economy. And so it's, like I said, it's easy to defend what we do because I think everyone is a beneficiary of that.
On that, we will have to conclude. We got stocks and fish coming up.
All right.
So Aron Balok is. So what is your title with the district? You're
Superintendent.
The superintendent
Yep.
of the Pecos Valley Artesian Conservancy District. How do people get a hold of you if anything that you said today has generated some interest,
Sure.
either in applying for the job or if they have questions about what you do?
You can find us on the web at www.pvacd.com. You can give us a call at 575-622-7000, or you can come by our office at 2303 East 2nd Street.
East 2nd Street.
Yep.
So you guys are that way.
Yeah. And so with
Toward the river.
Yeah. If you're in Roswell, feel free to stop by our office there. We're in the process of building a new facility, so hopefully within a year we'll have a new building. We're building a new shop and office facility, so I'm really excited. We've been planning that for almost 10 years now, and trying to scrape together the pennies to do so, and so I'm really excited that we're going to have a new facility to work out of.
Excellent. Aron Balok, thank you so much for coming in. We need to have you back again
Would love to.
real soon, so we'll see if we can get that on the calendar, okay?
Very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Aron.